So what we're going to do here, guys, is we're going to talk about, I'm going to go over the key concepts, okay, tell you kind of how I'm going to test things, stuff like that, and then I'll actually tell you kind of what's on the test. Like I'll literally say, question number 1 in the written response is this, and I'll tell you, okay? Now the reason I'm doing that, okay, like I'm not going to show you the questions, but the reason I'm going to tell you exactly what's on there is because I want you to study what's on the test. I don't want you to waste time studying things that are not going to be on the test, okay, so that you can be well prepared and you can focus your studying and make the most use of the time that you have before Wednesday.
How many questions are on the test?
I will get to that. I don't remember off the top of my head now because I changed it so many times. Okay? All right. So there is a multiple choice section and there is a written response section. Okay? There's like 30-something multiple choice. Anyway, well, I'll tell you exact numbers here in a minute. Okay? So the things that are going to be on there. The first thing we went over, okay, was structure and history of the atom. Right now, I'm not going to be asking for like the date that Rutherford ran his experiment or anything like that. But I would say that in terms of history of the atom, the important things to know would be like the people who made the most important discoveries. I would say that's like, you know, Dalton and Rutherford and probably de Broglie. Okay? And I would know what the models look like. Okay, we talked about a few models. You have pictures of them in your notes. There could be a multiple choice question that says, whose model is this? And you got a picture of an atom. Okay, and you have to tell me whose model it is from there. Okay, so stuff like that. That's not going to be something that's tested heavily. There might be like 2 or 3 multiple choice questions about that. Okay, now, structure of the atom, okay? Know our currently accepted model of the atom. Which one is it? Close. It's the electron cloud model, but yes, it's cloud. Okay, so we got the cloud model. Okay, it's de Broglie's electron cloud model, or sometimes we call it the quantum model. And it involves having obviously a nucleus and then electrons in this cloudy area surrounding the nucleus. Okay, so you need to know what that currently accepted model is. You need to know how to get the correct number of protons, how to get the correct number of neutrons, and how to get the correct number of electrons for any given atom. Here is how that's going to be tested. In the written response, I am going to have a question that does this. Draw a picture of an atom of blank. Okay? And I'm just going to pick an element off the periodic table, and you need to draw me a picture of what that atom will look like. The proper model, all the particles, so protons, neutrons, and electrons, with the right numbers of particles in the right places. Okay, so make sure that when you draw your correct number of protons, that they all go in the nucleus. That when you draw your correct number of neutrons, they all go in the nucleus. Okay, and so on and so on. Everyone follow me there? Okay, so that's what you're going to be asked to do. I will just pick an element off the periodic table and say, draw a picture of it. Now, I'm not going to pick like, uranium where you have to draw 200 particles. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'll pick something simple so it doesn't take you forever to draw. Right? So know the correct model, know where everything goes, and know how to get the right number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Okay, naming and formulas. This is going to be tested directly in the multiple choice. So there'll be some multiple choice questions like, what's the correct formula for barium chloride? And there'll be 4 options. Okay? Or what's the correct formula for diphosphorus tetranitrate or whatever? Okay? There'll be questions like that. Or what's the name of P2O5? Stuff like that. Okay? So there will be some multiple choice questions about naming and formulas. But the place where that's most important is in the written response when you're writing out chemical reactions and when you're doing mole equation calculations, because you've got to get the formulas right for those. Okay? And if you don't, obviously you won't get the balancing right, you won't get the molar mass right, and it just snowballs from there. Okay? So that's probably your most fundamental skill that you have to have for the test. Okay, so things to remember, Roman numerals. When do you use Roman numerals?
And then more than one charge.
Right, when the metal has more than one possible charge, when it's a multivalent metal, and we talked about how you figure that out. And don't forget about your special elements. Okay, those are all highlighted on your periodic table. Incidentally, about your periodic tables, I will let you have your periodic table for the test, but I will look at it first. Okay? If you have written a whole bunch of stuff on it, note to self, like the whole thing is covered in your chicken scratch, I'll just give you a fresh one. Okay? So you can have yours. I don't mind if you have like the prefixes written on there, okay, or something like that, but I don't want on there all the naming rules and what the reaction types are with examples and how to do mole equation calc. Like you can't have all that stuff on there. Okay? If you got the prefixes written on there, I'm fine with that. But if you've written a lot of stuff on your periodic table, I'm just going to give you a fresh one. Okay. All right, so that covers naming. Properties of compounds. So this is lesson 4. Okay, and then we did a lab where we identified unknown compounds using only their physical properties. Okay, this is going to be pretty much all tested in the multiple choice. So I might give you a question something like this. You have an unknown compound, and the properties of the compound are as follows. It is a blue crystalline solid that is highly soluble in water, whose solution conducts electricity, pH of 6. This compound is likely to be A, water, B, sugar, C, copper 2 sulfate, D, nickel 2 chloride. Right? That would require you to understand and have some knowledge of the stuff that was in lesson 4. Basically, I'm going to ask you, can you still do what you did on your lab? And can you identify an unknown compound from its properties? Okay, solubility. This is mostly terminology, although there is a question in the written response that has to do with your solubility chart and a bit of extrapolation. Okay, but it's mostly terminology, and that's in the multiple choice. Okay, so know, what a solute is, what a precipitate is, what it means to be saturated, stuff like that. Be able to use your solubility chart. There's some multiple choice questions that say, here's a reaction, which, if any, of the products are soluble? Right, and then you have to look at products, look in your solubility chart, okay, that one is, this one isn't, they both are, neither of them, okay, whatever. Okay, so be able to use your chart. Okay, the polar nature of water. There is a written response question about the polar nature of water. In order to answer it, you will need to be able to do the following things. You will need to be able to explain what a polar molecule is, or what it means to be a polar molecule. Okay? That unequal sharing of electrons, that kind of thing. Making one end positive and one end negative, that kind of thing. Okay? Be able to explain what it is. Also be able to talk about what that means it will do. Okay? These hydrogen bonds that are in there. Okay? How that causes cohesion and adhesion and what that looks like. Okay? It's all in your notes. You just got to review that. Okay? It's all in lesson 7, second half of lesson 7. Okay? Be able to tell me what a polar molecule is, how it works, what behaviors it will show, and probably be able to tell me how some living organism uses it to its advantage. Okay, so what is a polar molecule? Cohesion and adhesion, real world examples. reactions. If there is one thing on this test that is worth way more marks than anything else, it's reactions. Okay. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but when I made up the test and then made up the key, it really felt like half the test was reactions, like marks-wise. Okay? It's big, because I can test almost everything else in the unit by having you write out chemical reactions. Okay? It tests whether you can do names and formulas. It tells me whether you know the reaction types. It tells me whether you understand the reaction patterns and can predict final products, whether you can obey the law of conservation of mass and balance reactions. Okay? All of that stuff is important. Okay? So yeah, if you're going to spend time on something this weekend, spend time practicing your reactions skills. Okay? Writing them out, okay? Balancing, predicting, all that kind of stuff. There's way more marks on the test about that than there is anything else. Okay? So be able to identify the types. There's a couple of multiple choice questions that are like, which of the following is a single replacement reaction, A, B, C, or D, okay, stuff like that. But mostly this is written response. And in the written response, it looks just like your reactions assignment. Okay, there's some that say, put it all, like here's the whole reaction. Write it out in formula form, identify the type and balance, just like the second section of your assignment. And then there's some that are predict the products of these reactions and balance, like the last section. Okay? And there's some that are just balance these, okay? Kind of like the first section. Okay, so predict the products, write the reactions, balance the reactions. Okay, all of that stuff is important. Okay, so make sure you go over that. If nothing else, go over that. Please let there be something else. Don't let that be the only thing. Okay, mole equation. I'm going over that for a couple of days. All 4 questions are on. There's only 4 ways I can ask. All 4 are on there. Okay, and scientific method. So there's a couple of multiple choice questions about design, experimental design, being able to identify variables mostly. Okay, so you're going to have some multiple choice questions that go something like this. A security company is wanting to test glass for use in banks. Okay, so in this test, they have 5 sheets of glass. Every sheet of glass is a different thickness. Okay. A firearms expert comes in and stands 10 meters from each sheet of glass and fires his weapon at a piece of glass. Each time the weapon is fired, it is the same weapon, it is the same caliber of bullet, it is from the same distance. Okay? All that is different is each time it's on a thicker piece of glass. Okay? What they're hoping to see is which glass is best at protecting the bank employees behind it. Okay? What's the manipulated variable? Right, the thickness of the glass. That's the kind of thing I would ask as a scientific method question. I give you a description of an experiment, and you have to identify which are the control variables or which is the manipulated variable or something along those lines. Okay? All right. That's what's on.
That's it?
Well, I'm going to tell you kind of how it goes. There's 8.
Right now.
Okay? There's 8 major concepts in this unit. We spent a lot of time on each one, especially reactions. Okay? But that's essentially what's on it. Okay. Now let's talk about the test specifically here.
Don't listen to stuff.
Well, that's not very nice. She was just surprised that that was all that was on there. That's okay. Okay, so here you go. The unit exam has 33 multiple choice questions. 6 written response. Some of those written response have like A, B, C, D, okay? There are 51 marks in the written response. And that's because I'm generous, not because there's tons of questions, but because I'm generous with the marks. Okay? Sometimes I make a question out of 5 that most teachers would make out of 3. The total of the test then obviously is 84. Okay, so as I was saying, in the multiple choice, we're going to test things like, physical and chemical properties, physical, chemical changes, like just your understanding, terminology, okay, the scientific method stuff, different properties of ionic compounds, property of molecular compounds.
Oh, when's the date for
Wednesday. No, it's been on the board there for, well, since before the break, right?
On Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, lots of properties of compound stuff, some stuff about solutions and solubility, okay, mostly again terminology stuff, properties of compounds. There's a lot of properties of compounds. There's 2 questions about the scientific method, then naming, structure of the atom. Naming, writing formulas, structure of the atom. Yeah. Okay, so that's what's in the multiple choice. Now, for the written response, question number 1 is 7 equations that need to be balanced only. Okay, so 7 chemical reactions that just need to be balanced. Written response question number 2 is 4 reactions where you have to identify the type, predict the products, and balance. Okay, remember how I was saying it really felt like lots of the marks were about reactions? Whole test is out of 84. First 2 questions are all about reactions. That's 23 marks.
Whoa.
Okay, each one of the reactions that you have to identify the type, predict the products, and balance is a 4-mark question. Each one of them are 4 marks. That's 16 marks right there, okay, on just being able to predict, balance, okay, identify the type. So, yeah, and then balancing the question before, there's 7 marks there, so it's 23 marks. All right, question number 3. Drawing the picture of the atom. Okay, I tell you which atom or which element, you draw its atom. Okay, that's a 5-mark question. 5 marks. Here's the 5 marks. Correct number of protons, correct number of neutrons, correct number of electrons. Put them in the right place, have the correct model. 5 marks.
When you say like put them in the right place, what do you mean by that?
I mean, like, you have protons where they belong in the atom.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
Neutrons where they
okay.
belong.
Like where the electrons are, like in
Yeah.
circles,
Well, you gotta draw the right model.
There's
Yeah.
one lesson.
Okay, then, question number 4 is your mole equation question. So there's 4 parts to it, A, B, C, and D, okay? And those are your 4 mole equation questions.
Do we still get a test on Tuesday then, like a quiz?
A quiz on Tuesday, yes, on the mole equation, because we didn't have one yesterday, because I didn't think we had enough time to practice the mole equation for me to quiz you on it yet. Okay, so you will have a quiz on Tuesday on the mole equation. Okay, question number 5, that's the one about the polar nature of water. Okay, so I already talked about what you need to do about polar molecules and that kind of stuff. That's a 5-mark question. Okay, and then the last question is kind of my separate the wheat from the chaff kind of a question. Okay, it's only out of 4 marks, but it gives you a situation that you probably haven't encountered yet and asks you to apply what you have learned in this unit to that situation. And I will tell you that it involves reactions and solubility. Okay, so it's going to be a situational question where you are going to have to kind of come up with a solution using your knowledge of reactions and solubility. And that's it. Now, to give you an idea here, guys, like some of you might be thinking, gee, that test sounds really long. I don't think I'll finish it. I always judge whether a test is long enough by how long it takes me to make the key. Okay? I expect that I can make the key for a test in about 3 to 4 times faster than you can write the test. Okay? And that's just because I made up the test, so I should naturally be able to get the answers faster. Okay? So the test took me 21 minutes.
Of course.
You have 85 minutes to write. That means you have 4 times as long as it took me to write the test. If the test comes in at 4 times longer, okay, like you would have 4 times longer than it took me, that means the test is on the short or easy side. If it's more closer to 3, then the test is long and or on the harder side. Okay, so other than that last question where you have to apply what you know, there's nothing on this test you haven't done many, many times in this class already. Okay, like you've balanced how many reactions, you've predicted how many reactions, you've done how many mole equation calculations, you've done how many naming things, like you've done all this stuff lots and lots of times. So that the only thing that's going to be kind of different is that last question, and it's only 4 marks. Okay. All right. The resources that are available to you, if you haven't checked them out already. Right. Yesterday, I put the chemistry exam review materials up in Google Classroom, and I will attach to that post the recording that I'm making right now. Right. But in there is the review package. Okay, so if you open that up, okay, these are just some activities for you to try, okay, as review. Okay, so there's lots of different things here that are all like what would be on the test. Okay, some of these are actually old exam questions, like I'll bring you to your attention to question number 12. Okay, like this is an old exam question, and it's one of the wheat from the chaff kind of questions from before. Okay, and then there's a practice test. Right? So there's some multiple choice questions, gives you an idea of how I'm going to word things and what I'm going to ask. Okay, this one has 25 questions, your test has 33. Okay. And then there's some practice written response questions, and it goes just like your test. Okay, there's some balancing questions, and then there's some predict the products questions, and then there's some mole equation questions. Okay, and a draw a picture of an atom question. And well, this question's I don't have anything like that on this test, but, okay? And then question number 6, okay? That's an old week from the chaff kind of question, okay? So it gives you an idea of what's gonna be on there, how I'm gonna word it, okay? Maybe how long it might take you, okay? This test is a bit shorter, obviously, because it's only 25 multiple choice, and there aren't as many balancing questions and things like that. So you can kind of gauge it, time yourself, see how long it takes you to do it if you're gonna do it, okay? Yeah, but that's the stuff you have. And I've also got in there the key. Okay, so there's a key in there that's got answers that you can check your answers to after you've gone over it. Okay, and that includes for the practice test. Okay. All right. On Wednesday, okay. No, when the class period is over, it's done. I can't let you leave the class and come back and continue writing, but you can start early. Okay, so make arrangements if you normally take the bus, make arrangements to get a ride here so that you can start early. I will let you start at, let's say, 10 after 8, because we do tend to lose 5 to 10 minutes for announcements. Okay, and that'll give you a little bit of extra time if you want it. But no, I can't give you time after. Right? I have a class period too. They're going to come in here. I can let you start before, and I'm giving you lots of time to make arrangements to get here early. Okay? But that's what I can do. Unless, of course, you're writing in learning support or you have an allocation for extra time, of course, then you would get it. Okay? Yeah, and if that applies to you, I'll probably talk to you next week about what arrangements you want to make for your revisions. Okay, so yeah, you can start early, okay? It really shouldn't take you more than the class period. Okay? Like I said, it only took me 21 minutes to make the key, so it should be on a bit of the short side. And there's nothing in here you guys haven't done lots of times. You know exactly what's on here, you know exactly what to study, okay? So you should be well prepared on Wednesday when you come in to write. All right. Questions from you guys? Anything you want me to cover or go over? Monday we're going to do a little bit of mole stuff, and Tuesday we're going to start unit 2. Okay, so what should your studying for this test look like? I think we talked about this already, but just quick review.
Practice questions and the practice test.
Yep, practice questions, the review thing that I gave you there. You've got worksheets from the digital workbook with keys, okay, that you can use to practice with. So yes, practicing. And then obviously going over the parts of your notes that I said are important. That would be lesson 1, lesson 4, and lesson 7. Okay, would probably be the most important ones because they're the ones that are tested in the multiple choice. That's solubility, polar nature of water, properties of compounds, okay, and then structure of the atom. Okay. How long should you study in one sitting?
15 minutes.
Yeah. I wouldn't go longer than 40.
5 hours.
I would say like kind of the sweet spot's around 25 minutes to a half an hour. Okay. If you study longer than that at one sitting, you're not going to commit what you're studying to memory very well because it's too much for your short-term memory to keep. Okay. So short bits here and there. It's also easier to manage that way because you can kind of do it whenever. But yeah, make sure you're doing that, and make sure that you get a good night's sleep the night before. Okay, those are little like easy things that can help you do well on the test. Get a good night's sleep, get a good breakfast. Okay, black coffee and cigarettes is not breakfast. Okay, so have something better than that. Okay, before coming in to write your test. Remember that for the test, you need to have a scientific calculator. You cannot use your phone. Your phone will be in a plastic bin at the front of the room. Okay? So make sure you have a scientific calculator at the very least for the test, and a couple of pencils probably, and maybe a pen or two, depending on what you want to use to write. Now, on the multiple choice section on that note, you guys have all used the zip grade sheets before? Okay, pretty much everybody uses them now. Okay, just a note on that. Okay, the beauty of zip grade is that I don't have to manually go over your test sheet. Thus, I shall not manually go over your test sheet. So, if you are going to change an answer, please make sure you erase it completely. Okay? ZipGrade's awesome. It does lots of great things. What it doesn't do is recognize mistakes. And what I mean by mistakes is you do the question and you're like, oh yeah, it's B. And you shade that puppy in nice and dark. And then you're like, oh, I didn't see that number. Crap, it's not that one. It's that one. And then you're like, oh, I forgot to put the decimal in the calculator. You laugh. I see that every time. Okay? Even after I say this, I still see that. Do you know what my phone says when I scan it with the ZipGrade app and it sees that? Wrong. That's what it says, and it's right. That is wrong. Okay? You can't do that. It doesn't know what to do when there's more than one answer filled in. Okay? Unless the key actually says 3 out of the 4 answers are right, which it doesn't say. Okay? Not ever. So, when you're going through your test the first time, my recommendation, okay, is that you just put a dot in the middle. Okay, just a little bit of shading, and that way if you have to change it, that's easy to erase. Okay, as opposed to having to erase the whole thing, because sometimes even if you erase the whole thing, there's still enough there that the camera picks it up. Okay, so just put the little dot in, and then when you're sure about all your answers, then shade that puppy in nice and dark.
Are we gonna go over the exam, like question by question, or no?
When, after I've marked it, like the next day? Yes. Yeah, we will. Okay, so just make sure you're not doing this, okay? Because the phone will just say it's wrong, and it'll be right about that. It'll be wrong. Okay, so be mindful, and also do that in pencil. I usually see this when someone does it in pen. Okay, if you do it in pen, that's karma. I'm telling you, don't do it in pen. Okay, don't do it in pen. All right. Any questions from you guys? Anything you want me to go over in a bit more detail, or? Okay, remember, there's still help sessions next week before your test. Okay, Monday morning, Monday at after school, okay, and Tuesday at lunch and Tuesday after school. Okay, there's help sessions. There obviously won't be help Wednesday morning because you'll be starting your test then. Okay, so don't come in at like 8:01 and go, Mr. Greer, I got 5 questions. I got no answers. Okay, I'm going to be getting the test set up at that point. Okay, come and see me before that. All right, you still got some time here in class. I'd say use it to study. Okay, you got a review package you could be looking at right now.